Hey guys, Morgan here, host of next month's Stop the Sale of Victoria rally, which will be taking place here in Melbourne. Just a quick video, guys. The other day I had the honor of interviewing somebody I respect very much, a retired general from the US Air Force. That's right, retired General Robert Spalding. He was kind enough to sit down and speak with me for some time regarding his new book, Stealth War, which is a tremendous model which outlines exactly China's strategy for infiltrating and dominating other countries around the world. So just a little bit about Robert. He is a veteran of the US military of more than 26 years. He completed his service in the military as a general in the Air Force, which of course is a position that very, very few people reach. On top of that, he holds a doctorate in mathematics and economics. He served as a senior director for strategic planning to the president at the National Security Council. And he also served as a China strategist for the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the Joint Staff at the Pentagon. He's lived and studied in China. He speaks perfect Mandarin, and if there's anybody who understands the true global threat of China, it is most definitely Robert. So guys, this is his book, Stealth War. It's such a great read. It goes into tremendous detail about how China is approaching their ambitions for global dominance. I recommend everybody purchases this book. It's available on Amazon Australia for about $30. So go out and get it. Knowledge is power. I don't expect Daniel Andrews to be reading this book anytime soon. He has proven that he thinks that he knows best, although he certainly should read this book. So guys, enjoy the interview and go out and grab the book. Cheers. Robert, can you please just give us a bit of an idea? Why did you write Stealth War, and what was it that you were looking to achieve from this novel?
Well, one of the things I found over the last 6 years working in government at the Pentagon, in the embassy in Beijing as a senior defense official to China, and then at the White House as a senior director for strategy, was that there was incredible ignorance about the Chinese Communist Party and the regime. And what I've been working on really since 2014 was trying to understand how the Chinese Communist Party, using globalization and the internet, really the openness of the West, had essentially subverted a lot of the international rules and norms, and really not just that, but domestic interests of the American people and a lot of other people of other democracies. And so what I really felt I needed to get that message out to the population of the United States and other democracies that needed to be made aware of this. I knew I couldn't do it in government, so I actually had to end my career prematurely, and retire in order to write the book.
So we've seen things like our mining rights sold to Chinese corporations, water rights, big factories, farms, cattle stations, ports. We saw the port of Darwin, our most strategic port, signed over to a Chinese corporation for a 99-year lease. Now, could you please talk a little bit about that and why maybe Australians should be concerned about the tremendous selling off of our industries and resources rights?
Well, I think one of the things that the media portrays, and certainly a lot of government officials portray, is that the international economic, financial, and trade order is based on free trade. And it is to the extent that democracies participate. But when a totalitarian regime, particularly the Chinese, led by the Chinese Communist Party, joins that international order, they join it on the basis of what their own particular system is. And it is not a system based on free trade. It's actually a system based on advantaging Chinese corporations for the purpose of providing jobs for Chinese people in order to perpetuate the leadership regime of the Chinese Communist Party. And they must do that in a very predatory and parasitic manner on democracies that do practice free trade in order to keep the party in power. And I think we have been subject to essentially a collaboration between the elites in democracies, who, quite frankly, were made rich by this partnership with the Chinese Communist Party, and the regime in China. And they do it for their own purposes, for their own benefit. And a lot of people in Australia and America get really, really rich, and they want to perpetuate it.
Well, absolutely, and I would say the people that get rich are certainly in the minority of people. Would you mind talking a little bit about the Belt and Road Initiative and why Victorians and Australians should pay attention to what our Premier Daniel Andrews is doing?
Yes, one of the things that comes out of these infrastructure loans that come on the back of Belt and Road Initiative is really usurious terms, which ends up in the country in debt, forfeiting their asset to the Chinese. This has happened over and over again. The other thing that happens is that very often, in fact, there's a lot of court records of this. Politicians are paid bribes for essentially signing documentation. Usually in the case of these loans, there's no documentation that anybody has any access to, and they're kept quite transparent because of the nature of the Chinese Communist Party, and they don't want these things getting out into the public. And finally, they use it for the purpose of providing them and the opportunity to create changes within a given society that essentially follow Chinese Communist Party interests. So there's all kinds of added baggage that people aren't aware of when these infrastructure projects come in. It's not like a sister democracy who seeks to have similar values, similar principles. They really seek to undermine democracies everywhere. Not because just because they're democracies, but really they fear those values becoming instantiated in the Chinese people themselves. And so it's an effort for them to protect themselves, and when I say themselves, the Chinese Communist Party, from democratic principles seeping into their society by essentially subverting democracies everywhere.
That makes sense, and we've seen a great deal of that. Now, interference and subversion, this is rife in Australia, and I feel that it's rife because A, a lot of people don't know what's going on, and B, I think we have a very ignorant leadership base. I would love for you to speak in our federal parliament. I don't know if that's possible or not. Maybe that would be possible. But Robert, we've got it all here. We've got our state broadcaster, the SBS, playing news from CGTN, and so SBS is funded by we, the Australian people, broadcasting this type of news that is straight out of the propaganda basement of the Chinese Communist Party. We've had the Chinese Communist Party approach candidates to run for office, one of those of whom came and told the authorities what happened, and he ended up dead in a hotel room. This is like a movie. We have other MPs like Gladys Liu, who was connected to the Chinese Communist Front, advisors to the Premier who were connected to the Chinese Communist Front. Newspaper backed and funded by the Chinese Communist Party on the streets of Australia, Confucius Institutes, billboards in Chinese with quotes from President Xi, yet most people are walking around completely oblivious to this. Can you just please try and tell the Australian people, what is the Chinese Communist Party trying to do to Australia by the propagation of all of this propaganda here at home? We can't spread Australian ideals in China. How can they spread Chinese Communist Party ideals in Australia?
Yeah, they usually do it through money and financial connections, but also the way that large tech companies use big data, artificial intelligence, and social media networks to influence you, say, for instance, to buy shoes, is a lot of the same techniques that the Chinese Communist Party uses to influence. And they learned this from the Russians, who have demonstrated time and again. And recently in the Taiwan elections, they do this quite heavily. So one of the things that's been enabled with smartphones and large Silicon Valley tech companies is this ability to really take influence down to the level of the individual, and using their data begin to not only understand what their interests are, but then begin to slowly influence their habit patterns through that medium. And this is something that Silicon Valley has really developed quite well, and there's a lot of algorithms and use of data that's quite sophisticated. These can be adapted to go beyond just selling you things to really influencing how your outlook about things. And they do this not just in social media, like you mentioned, but also in legacy media. As you know, they are highly involved in television, radio, and print media around the world, promoting their image. And a lot of them, place ads that are meant to look like regular articles in major U.S. newspapers, and I'm sure they're doing the same thing in Australia. So it's a very sophisticated way of warfare. It's called People's War. It's really about undermining your adversary using the day-to-day. It's not about using bombs and bullets. It's really about today. It's ones and zeros and dollars and cents. So it's a highly sophisticated form of information warfare and political warfare, and they're extremely well versed at it.
I hope you guys enjoyed the interview, and once again, I just want to give a huge thank you to Robert for spending the time with me. Very, very much appreciated, and I know that many Australians appreciate it as well. Once again, guys, the name of the book is Stealth War. You can go and grab it from Amazon Australia. Next month, guys, 22nd of March, 12 p.m, on the steps of the State Library in Melbourne, 12 p.m. We will be congregating once again to speak out against the secretive, shady dealings between Daniel Andrews and the Chinese Communist Party, and together we will stop the sale of Victoria. I'll catch you then, guys. Take care.